Hey folks, in today's video, you're going to be learning how to write a script that will automate the creation of a Google document using Google Sheets. So what you're going to be learning how to do today is writing paragraphs, creating lists, inserting charts, and inserting tables. So the result will be that you will have a script that you can run manually, or you can set to run at a specific interval that will write a Google document for you. I find this to be really impactful. I used to spend hours creating documents, and now all I have to do is write some scripts, and then I have tables and I have charts and bullet points and all that type of stuff. So all the data that you're seeing in here is coming from this Google Sheet here. So what I would recommend that you do is get a Google Sheet with some data in it. This one is going to be linked up in the description, so pause the video now, feel free to make a copy of that. And yeah, let's get going. So we are going to begin by creating a Google Drive folder. You can call it whatever you want to. I've already created mine, and I called it Create Google Document. And then I made a copy of the data sheet that you just saw, and I called it Automated Google Document. And you'll see that I have all my data in here eventually. There we go. We got my data. I have a chart over here. One note on charts: if you try to use a combo chart, Google Apps Script will not allow you to use that for whatever reason. It's an outstanding ticket. So I chose this line chart here. I think you can use bar charts and pie charts and all that type of stuff. Cool. So once you have your data environment all set up, go to the extensions menu and then go to App Script. And within the app script, we are going to be writing a couple files. So the first file that we're going to be doing is we're going to go up to our files menu and we are going to add a file, and it is going to be a script, and it is going to be get sheet by ID. And I am going to remove the boilerplate, and I'm going to write the word function, and then I'm going to call it get sheet by ID. And I'm going to pass it two arguments. The first is going to be workbook ID, and the second is going to be a sheet ID. I'm going to hit space, I'm going to do curly bracket, and then I am going to start declaring a variable for workbook. That's what WB stands for. I'm going to call spreadsheet app dot open by ID, and that's where we will be passing our first argument, the workbook ID. Next, we're going to be creating a variable called sheets, and sheets is where we will get all of the sheets from our workbook, and we are going to loop through them. So we're going to do for I, which stands for iterator, in sheets, and we're going to do space, curly bracket, hit enter, and we're going to say if sheets iterator, so square bracket I, dot get sheet ID is space, go outside of the parentheses and then do a space, double equal sign. If it's equal to sheet ID, our second argument, then we want to pass it to a variable called sheet name. And we are going to have that equal sheets iterator dot get sheet name. We're going to go down one line, two lines, make sure that your bracket for your for loop is lining up, and then hit enter. You'll then see that these two brackets should be grayed, which means we are now back into our function. We are outside of our for loop, we are outside of our if statement, and we are going to return WB dot get sheet by name, and then we're going to pass in that sheet name variable. We're going to have a semicolon, and we are done with this function. I moved really quickly because I have talked about get sheet by ID, and we've written get sheet by ID in several of my other automation videos. If you're interested in learning more about it, please check out my level 2 video or any of the above, and there will be a deeper explanation about why we do this and what we did in here. Cool. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create another file, and this one is going to be called data. And within the data file, we are going to create another script. we're going to use another script. And what we're going to do is we're going to start declaring some of our variables. So we are going to say a comment for workbook variables, and we are going to declare a constant. That's what const stands for, a constant for workbook, and we are going to call spreadsheet app dot get active spreadsheet. And what that's going to do is access whatever workbook that we are currently in. Then we're going to do constant, and we're going to call WBID, and we are going to call workbook.getID, and then we're going to declare a constant for sheet 1 ID, which is always 0. Next, we're going to declare some sheet variables. So this is where we're going to use our get sheet by ID function that we just wrote. So we're going to declare a variable for data sheet, and we're going to call get sheet by ID, and then we're going to do workbook ID and sheet 1 ID. And then we are going to declare a variable for data, and we're going to call data sheet dot get range. And then we are going to start at row 1, start at column 1, do datasheet dot get last row, and then datasheet dot get last column. And then we are going to use get display values, and we are going to be good to go. So now what we're going to do is we are going to declare some values for our document. So we've talked a lot about, in my previous videos, get sheet by ID, and we use datasheet.getRange and get display values and the logic for the get range method at length. What we're going to do in order to facilitate some data points that we can reference within the Google document itself is isolate the coordinates of specific data points. So what we're going to do now is we are going to write some variables for some key things that we're going to want to reference, such as the territory. So for territory, we're going to declare data, and then we're going to use a square bracket to reference the number 1, and then a square bracket to reference 0. So what we're going to do so that you can see what we just did is we're going to write a function, and we're going to call it tester, just so that we can run some of this stuff. So I'm going to log territory for you so you can see what it's doing. And this is also going to give us a good opportunity to give permissions to our script so that it can read from the Google Sheet that we are pulling from. All right, cool. So you can see that when we call territory, it's returning the United States. The reason for that is because we are starting at row 1, column 0. So this is the same thing as if you were in a Google Sheet and you referenced cell A2. Technically, within Google Apps Script, column A is column 0, and row 1 is row 0. So if we call data square bracket 0, square bracket 0, we're going to get country. So we're going to go back to our script. You don't have to do this. I just want you to understand what these square brackets are doing for us. So now that we run it for 0, 0, you can see we're getting country. So if we changed the second 0, we would be moving the column. So at present, data 00 is referencing cell A1. If we reference our data variable, 0 in the first square bracket, 1 in the second square bracket, we will then be getting cell B1. So the result should be name. Cool. If we change this 0 here to 1, we should return the name, which will be Alan. And if we change 1 to 0, we'll go back to the first column and we should get United States, which is what we want this variable to represent, being the territory. So if you're using a data set that is not the sample data set that I'm using, all you have to do is line up whatever data point that you want relative to a scale that is column 1 at 0, row 1 at 0, which means row 2 is actually row 1 and column B is actually column 1. And if you're having trouble with that, pause the video and log it out a little bit, right? Play around with it as we are here with with this function, like this tester function, just so that you can log things and see what's going on. Cool. So what I'm going to be doing now is continuing to declare my variables. So for name, I'm going to do data square bracket 1, square bracket 1. I'm going to do a variable for the month. And I want the most recent month. So we're going to do data square bracket 1 and then square bracket 2. So I'm going to log that out real quick just so that you can see. December 2022, that's what I want, right? So I'm calling row 1, column 0, 1, 2. So that's why we're doing 1, 2 in here, because I really want cell C1, which is data point 1, 2. Cool, now we're going to do a variable for inventory, and that is going to be equal to data 1, 3. And we're going to do another variable for gross revenue, which is equal to data 1, 4. And then we're going to do a variable for net rev, which is equal to data 1, 5. Cool. So now that we have all of our data points, we are going to collect our chart. So getting charts is kind of weird, but it's relatively straightforward. So what we're going to do is we're going to declare a variable for chart, and we are going to call our datasheet variable. And then we are going to get charts, and we are going to open a parentheses. And then if you look in the documentation, you can see that it tells us a couple different ways to get charts. So like if you have more than one chart, you can loop through it. We only have one chart, so I'm going to use square bracket 0, and then I'm going to use a method called getBlob, and it just returns the data within an object. So now we have that. And then just for the purposes of having something to work with, we're going to write a custom table. So we're going to declare a variable for table data. And we're going to have an open array here. We're going to hit enter, and then we're going to open a new array. This is going to be our first row. So we're going to call it month, inventory, net revenue, gross revenue. Cool. And then we're going to do a comma, and we're going to hit enter, and then we're going to do another square bracket. This will be our second array. We're going to do month, inventory, net rev, and gross rev. And the reason that we have single quotes around line 23, our first array, is because those are strings. Those are going to be the headers for the first row of our table. The reason that there are no single quotes around line 24 is because we're literally referencing these variables that we just declared. So we're going to get whatever is in data 1, 2, whatever is in data 1, 3 for inventory, all that type of stuff is going to just be referenced in this table. And the reason I'm doing this is just because I want to show you how setting a table works, basically. Cool. So we have now set up our data tab, and what we're going to do now is going to be a little, I don't know, it's kind of trippy. We're going to be writing a document. So we're going to open up another script file, and you can call it whatever you want to. I'm going to call it doc body, and we don't need a function anymore. We're going to be declaring some constants, and this is like an ongoing exploration for me personally. So anything that I'm showing you is me kind of working through my process. Just because I do it one way doesn't mean that that's the best way to do it. It's just how I do it, which is why I'm always really open to feedback. But because we are going to have text in here, I've been experimenting with creating a doc body file. So if I need to change any of the copy, I have an isolated place where I know where it is instead of having a really long script all in one file. So what I'm going to do is declare a constant for opener. And you can call these things whatever you want to. But basically, the reason I'm using opener is because I think about this as a like an opening paragraph from my document. So what I'm going to say, and you can like literally write whatever you want to. But what I'm going to teach you how to do is how to reference some of the constants from our data file in a text environment. So I'm going to say this report captures the performance of, and I'm going to have a space here, because if we don't have a space here, when we reference our constant, or our variables or whatever, it'll just appear right next to of. So we have to add a space in there at some other point. So then you can see we have an opening parenthesis here and an end parenthesis here. We're going to use the and or the plus symbol, and then we're going to type our variable for name. So what will happen is this opener constant will say this report captures the performance of space name. And then we're going to use another plus sign, and we're going to open up another single quote so that we can write some more text. We're going to open with a space, because if you don't, then it will just read the name and then in right next to each other. So you want a space, like it's a sentence, and then we're going to write in and a space, and we're going to do another space, and we're going to do another plus sign, and then we're going to reference our month variable. And we're going to do another plus sign, another single quote, and then we're going to do a period directly next to the month. We're not going to put a space here because the period goes right next to the last word of the sentence. We're going to do a space, and then we're going to say, this salesperson is responsible for operating in, and I'm going to, in the, oh, okay, cool, it curls. We're going to do a space, and we're going to reference that territory variable. So we're going to do plus sign, and we'll call territory. We'll do another plus. Oops, sorry, we'll do another plus, single quote, period. Space, the following represents their high level figures. And then we're going to do a colon, because we're going to lead into our list. Now, if we don't add a backslash or a forward slash, whatever that is, and an N, then the list is going to come directly after the end of that sentence. So if you want to have like a little bit of space or a little bit of padding, this symbol here is this, whatever, this slash in the end is how you do that. So we're done with that constant now. And now we're going to write some of our bullet points, or as they, they're an unorganized list. So we're going to call constant, and we're going to do inventory point. And actually, I'm going to shorten this. So I'm just going to call it invent point, but that stands for inventory point. And we're going to do total inventory. And then we're going to do a colon and a space. And then we're going to do a plus sign and the inventory variable. And then I'm going to use a plus single quote /n because I want a space in between my bullet points. I'm going to copy it just so that you don't have to watch me type all this stuff. Then I'm going to change the constant from invent to gross. I'm going to change total inventory to gross revenue. And I'm going to change that inventory constant to gross rev. Finally, I'm going to declare a constant for net point equals single quote net revenue plus net rev plus single quote /n. Cool. So now we got our bullet points. We're going to add in just another paragraph. So I'm going to call it second, and it's going to say, please consult the following chart for a time series analysis. And we're going to do colon, and we're going to do /n. And finally, we're going to have our conclusion. And we're going to say single quote /n. And we're going to say, if you have any questions, please reach out to me via email or direct message. Cool. That must have been the most riveting piece of any video that I've ever made. But now that we have all of our text and now that we have all of our data, we can get into the core of this and start writing a automated Google document from Google Sheets. So we're going to begin by calling a function, and I like to call it main. So we're not going to have any arguments, so we just have an empty parentheses. Then we're going to do a curly bracket, and then we are going to declare a variable for doc create. We're going to call document app.create, and this is where we're going to name our document. So we're going to say this is the monthly report for space single quote. Then we're going to go outside of it. We're going to do our plus sign, and then we are going to reference that name again. Then we're going to do a plus sign, and then we're going to do a single quote, and we're going to say in space plus month. So this is going to give us a nice title, very similar to this this monthly report for Allen in December 2022. And I'm going to actually delete this one now so that we don't have that in there. Cool. And now what we're going to do is go back to our script, and we are going to do a var for doc ID. And we are going to do doc create dot get ID. Then we're going to do a var for doc, and we're going to do doc create dot get body. So this doc variable that we just wrote is crucial. You need to access the body of the document in order to create in it. And basically the way that documents work is they have items. So, you open up a document, you start typing in it, you hit enter, you are creating paragraphs. If you add a list, it's just automatically inserting a list for you. If you paste in an image, it's automatically pasting the image in. So in order to script that stuff, we have to access the body, and we need to access the item. And we need to tell the document what item we want to insert it at. So we start at 0, then we go to 1, then we go to 2, then we go to 3, then we go to 4, and that's how the computer knows how to structure the document. So we are going to declare a variable for index, and we are going to call it 0. And what we're going to do is we're going to reference this index variable, and then we're going to iterate upon it. So we're going to incrementally iterate upon it by using the following syntax. So we're going to do, our first comment here is going to be insert the opening paragraph. And the way that we're going to do that is by doing doc.insert. And when you type in insert, you'll see that you have like all these options in here, right? So you can enter in an image, a list item, a page break, paragraph, and a table. We're going to insert a paragraph. And then the first argument for insert paragraph is the child index. So that child index is specifying where in the document your paragraph goes. So we're going to reference our index variable so that this is saying index 0. Then we're going to reference our opener constant. So that's the text that we just wrote. And then we could be done. But what we're going to do is we need to add a semicolon, and then we're going to reference index again, and then we're going to do plus plus. And what this is going to allow us to do is to increment relative to the last time index was used. So in some of my other projects, I hard-coded in insert paragraph 0, insert paragraph 1, insert list 2. That would then tell the code where to put it in the Google Doc. The problem with that is once you have, if you have like 15, 20, 30 children elements in here, and you decide that you want to add a paragraph in there, then you have to manually go back and change all those numbers. This syntax is going to allow you to just copy paste and put things in and move your document around very similarly to how you would actually write a document. Cool. So now what we're going to do is insert the list. So we're going to do doc.insert, and now we're going to use list item, and we are going to reference index, and then we're going to do invent point, which stands for inventory, and then we're going to use that semicolon, and then do index plus plus and a semicolon. Then we're going to do that exact same thing. Nope, that is not what we're going to do. Do index, don't do that, do a comma, and do gross point, semicolon, index plus plus. Someday I'll learn how to type. Then we're going to do doc.insert list item, index, net point, semicolon, index plus plus, semicolon. Cool. So actually, before we do that index and that semicolon, sorry for the false start there, list items default to numbers. So I just want to show you how to change that. Go to the last list item and do a period and do set glyph type, and then call the document app, then call the glyph type, and then you can enter in any glyph that you want to. So you can do a bullet, hollow bullet, all this type of stuff, number, square bullet, whatever. We're just going to do a bullet, and then we're going to do our semicolon, then we're going to do our index plus plus, and we're going to do our semicolon. Cool. So now what we're going to do is insert the second paragraph. So we're going to do doc.insert paragraph. We're going to call index, comma, second, semicolon, index plus plus. And now what we're going to do is insert the chart. And we're going to do doc.insert image. And we are going to do index, chart. And now what we're going to do is we're going to set the height and the width. The challenge with images, specifically ones that you pull from Google Sheets, is they're going to get a wonky placement in the document. Most of mine end up hanging off the right side of the document. So I find that you have to do period.set height, and I do 450, and then I set the width at 650. Then I do my semicolon, then I do index plus plus semicolon. So, you can do whatever you want to. I would, if you want to see what it looks like, just do doc.insert image semicolon index plus plus semicolon, and you'll kind of see what it looks like. And then if you want to, you use the height and width methods, and you can kind of change the size however you want to. So this is just the way that I do it, but go forth, do whatever makes you happy. Cool. So now we're going to insert our closing graph, and we're going to do doc.insert. I promise you I know how to type. I mean, I clearly don't, but like normally I do. Okay, cool. So we're going to do index, and then we're going to do a comma, and we're going to do the conclusion. We're going to do semicolon. We're going to do index plus plus semicolon. Cool. And now we're going to do our last thing, and we are going to insert the table. Cool. So we're going to do doc.insert table, and we're going to do index, and then we're going to do table data, and then we are going to do index plus plus semicolon. Sweet. So we are now done our script. And I just want everybody to know, every time that I said table, I was thinking of the sketch from I Think You Should Leave. So if you were hearing that too, I just want you to know I'm with you. Cool. So our script is done. We're going to go back to Google Drive now, and you can see that there's no document here currently. We're going to go back to our script, cross our fingers, hit run. We're going to review permissions, and this is just saying that it's like we're going to allow the app script to write a document. So you can see, blah, 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 blah. We allow it. Cool. So that looks like it worked. And check it out. We now have a monthly report for Alan in December 2022. And you can see that we have all that text that we wrote, and we have our name constant in here. We have our date constant. We have our inventory. We have our gross revenue. We have our net revenue. We have that chart looking exactly as we wanted it to. And then we have this line here. And you'll notice this table is appearing right after our conclusion. We don't really want it to look like that. So what we're going to do is we are going to go back to our doc body in here, and we are going to add an N at the end, and we're going to save that. And we are going to run this again and go back here and check it out. Now we have two documents. Woo. And then we're going to go to the bottom, and now we have that space in there. So that was good that we got to see that, right? Now we see what that /n does. But cool. I thought that this was really cool when I first started doing it. Because like I said, I used to spend like in my first job, I would spend 8 to 10 to 12 hours pulling down data, modeling data, building charts, so that then I could write Google documents for like 6 entities that I needed to report on. And it was just grueling. It was just so challenging. So this is like a really efficient way of doing it. And I actually just noticed that we have a little bug here too. So I'm going to fix that real quick. And then I'm going to go back to my heartfelt speech about blah, 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 about how this is helpful and what have you. So 0, 1, 1, 1. Oh, I see what happened. It was because of this data thing in here. Okay, anyway, I think you get the point. We don't have to be super tight with all of this. But yeah, I hope you found this helpful. What's going to happen from here is in the future, I'm going to be breaking down like how to use charts, how to create list items, how to write paragraphs, and then how to work with tables. The one thing that we didn't focus on with the table thing here was adding like color to the header row so that the first row is bold and has a gray outline and all that type of stuff. So yeah, let me know if you found this helpful or if there's anything else I didn't cover that you want to touch on. Um, yeah, and like I said, just because I do things one way doesn't mean that's the best way to do it, or the only way to do it. So if you have suggestions, leave them in the comments. That way, other people can, see what I did and then look at what you did and then figure out what works best for them. Cool. Hopefully, I'll see you in the next one.